Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for a link to my Amazon store where I've compiled some of the very best items available, including some of my own personal recommendations. Thanks! What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Protech and Arcform Slimfoot automatic. Very, very cool. A lot of you guys remember ways back on the channel, I actually reviewed the Arcform Slimfoot, the actual Arcform Slimfoot, and that was pretty cool. Truthfully, I don't know if the original was a production, meant for production design, or if there was actually a custom. The ones that I have handled were the Arcform Slimfoot production variant, and then this one here, which is the automatic variant. There are some differences. The main one being, of course, that this is automatic. A bunch of stuff that we're going to talk about. This was sent to me by @AddictedToEDC on Instagram, along with many other Protech knives. Please give him a follow. It's because of people like him that I'm able to bring you guys daily knife content. It's also because of my generous patrons. Thank you so much for supporting me right now. If you'd like to check out my Patreon and get your hands on some of these cool stickers, there is, of course, a link down in the description. The support would mean the world to me. Let's go ahead and get a measurement of this guy. This is not a large knife, but not necessarily a small knife, coming in at about 7 1/4 inches. Blade length coming in at 3 1/4, actual cutting edge 3 1/8, very similar to the size of the Para 3. It's about what I'd call a medium-sized knife. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons. Up against the Ontario Rat Model 1, the Rat 1 is coming in at 8.6 inches overall. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? Spyderco PM2 coming in at 8.3 inches overall. How about up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue coming in at 8 inches overall. Yeah, there we go. And last but not least, the Spyderco Para 3. Para 3 is coming in at 7 1/4 inches overall. You can see there they are very close, almost exactly the same length. The camera angle's throwing it off slightly. How's the action on this guy? Well, this is a Protech, and like other Protechs, it has a very snappy action. You simply push that button and it releases the blade. The action is nice and smooth. It feels like a quality side opening automatic. In fact, I've said this many times, I truly believe that Protech makes the best side opening automatic knives in the world. They are US made, which is, in my book, a plus. I'm from the United States, right? So that's great. But yeah, very, very smooth, very powerful, even for a small, not really small, but a medium-sized automatic knife. Feels good. Let's go ahead and talk about carry profile. So we'll do blade thickness first. So we can tie that into weight. Sorry, getting my calipers zeroed out and turned on. Blade stock thickness coming in at, whoops, I was like, it can't be that, then it was slipping off the end there. Blade stock thickness, once again, coming in at, it says 123 thousandths. I'm wondering, oh, that's why. It's that top part is a swedge. That's why it looks so thin. So yeah, 123. So we're looking at very similar thickness to the Benchmade Griptilian or Ritter Hogue. In terms of thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3, you can see there we are a little bit thicker on the aluminum. It actually is, it's fairly thick. It's not Medford thick, but it's fairly thick. In terms of carry profile up against the Spyderco PM2 and Para 3, two knives that have unquestionably awkward carry profiles that nobody ever complains about. You can see there that it is both shorter in handle and in overall height than both of these knives. It's basically a rectangle that's kind of thick, but it's made out of aluminum and a fairly thin stock of what I believe is 154 cm. It doesn't say on there. Almost every single Protech that I have ever handled has been 154 cm, but they do experiment periodically with S35 VN. I will be, I don't believe that these are available at the time of this video. I feel like this is 154 cm, but like the SBR is S35. Sorry about that, went to check. Yes, it is 154 cm, so now we can move on. Anyways, sometimes Protech experiments with some different steels. Sometimes I'll see 154 cm. Sometimes I'll see CPM 154. I think I've seen S30V I'm not 100% sure there, but I've definitely seen S35VN. In any case, 154cm is a plenty fine steel for this knife. I've sent it many times. 154cm/CPM 154 are two of my favorite knife steel compositions for actual use, and there is a marginal difference between the performance of both, despite one having the CPM process, and that's because in the specific case of 154cm, it does not really benefit that much from the powder form process. So anyways, steel's great. Talking about weight though, we are looking at aluminum and fairly thin stock of 154cm in an overall, size that's really not all that big. So we're looking at a completely understandable 3.35 ounces, which is very close to that ounce and inch mark. I don't think the profile, the only thing that's really going to bother some people is that it's got a little bit of thick. It's not, when I say thickness, I don't mean like Medford thick. It's just a little bit thicker than the Para 3. But because of the overall profile and the size and the weight, it's really just not going to bother you. If you're wearing athletic shorts, right, or you've been used to carrying the bug out of the Para 3 lightweight, then yeah, it might bother you. For 99% of people though, just wearing regular jeans, khakis, work pants, whatever, it's not going to bother you. No big deal. All right, I would do the hardboard check, but we're looking at hex. And we're looking at more hex on the other side, which is fine. I normally use torque. You guys know I like to use my handy dandy WIA bit selector and WIA magnetic driver, two items that are very inexpensive and very recommendable that you can find down in the Amazon store that I reference at the beginning of every video. But I don't need to, because I've got some hex heads, but hex heads are easy to come across. They oftentimes come with a multi-head bit set. You do have some T6 torque screws on the inside of that pocket clip, which is not a big deal. If you really wanted to get into this knife, you can. Right, I don't think Protech really wants you to get her in there and mess around with stuff. If there's something wrong with your knife, contact Protech, right? But if you need to take it apart and you're like, I don't really care about the warranty, then yeah, you can, right? And as is the case with a lot of warranties, it's probably case by case. So if you take it apart and you put it back together and everything still works, right? I don't know. Contact Protech to find out their exact thoughts on doing that. Anyways, let's go ahead and talk about the anatomy of this knife. So this particular one comes in this really nice blue anodization. There are a lot of different versions of this. I've seen just the plain black and the tumble blade. I'm sure they've got a satin version. I'm sure they've got different colors of anodizing on the scales. Like I said, I don't think this knife is available right now, and I don't know that that means that it's permanently gone. I feel like it's just this run. Protech likes to do things in short runs. So as of right now, it seems to be sold out on major retailers. There might be one or two floating around out there in some odd places, but when they are available, they do come in many forms. I like this blue. It's kind of nice. As is the case with most Type 3 hard coat anodizing, it will wear away slowly over time, but it is very durable, as I've proven many times, or shown many times with that Protech Rock Eye that I show periodically on the channel. That I show periodically on the channel. It's got a lot of battle scars, and that coating will wear away, but it is pretty durable, right? All the edges and everything are nicely knocked down. I wouldn't say there's anything that's too pointy, anything like that. It is very comfortable ergonomically, but I find it odd, and this is the case with the other Slimfoot, is that the space for your index finger, right? I'm locked in here, but I only really have a 3-finger position on this knife, and I'm also awkwardly far away from the initial cutting edge. Now, this knife is achieving a certain aesthetic, design by having this area right here, right? So if they cut this out, then there would be a choil there. But for whatever reason, this area right here in combination with the blade kind of makes the Slimfoot design for me. It's the whole thing, right? But I'm telling you, and if we move this area up, or we put a choil right here, it really does take away a lot, for whatever reason, aesthetically. I'm trying to mentally imagine that. It kind of takes away from what I have come to know as that Arcform Slimfoot look. Seeing this knife now, immediately in my head, I can go, that's an Arcform Slimfoot, right? You could make the argument it takes away there, but still, though, just functionally, I would have preferred that number one, this area right here where you're meant to engage with your index finger was more forward, so that I could have more handle room and perhaps get all 4 fingers on there, and also be much closer to the cutting edge. It can be awkward to be so far, right, from the cutting edge. That's quite a ways. But it's not a deal breaker. It's not a reason not to pick this knife up. Those are minor nitpicks, and they're basically, a lot of it, really, the whole 3-finger thing is my own bias. Yeah, nice fit and finish everywhere. The button is great. It's recessed, right? So there's not much chance of it going off in your pocket. It should be pressed up against the seam of your pants or I'm sorry, the inside of your pocket, so that's fine. And everything looks really nice, right? It's not really contoured, it's just got a lot of chamfering around the outside, and I like that. I think it looks really, really good. The blade here is two-tone, and it is that sort of cleaver style, or the signature Arcform Slimfoot style blade, and it's nice. I mean, there's no real tip to break off, right? In some cases, it's kind of nice to have the tip down here because then you can do those draw cuts, even though there is a little bit of belly. It is fairly thick behind the edge, but not so, I mean, just in contrast with the thickness, right? A lot of times I feel the thickness of the spine, or in this case, it's actually the flat that's the thickest part, because there's a swedge up here connecting with the spine. I feel that, right? And then I'm thinking, how long until the cutting edge? And you're kind of feeling it out. So, like whenever I feel like a thick blade that drops really dramatically, like maybe even a hollow ground down to a thin edge, it's always like, holy cow, you know? In this case, it's not a lot of thickness to start out with, and there's not an enormous amount of room to drop towards the cutting edge. So it does get reasonably thin down here, but it's not super thin, right? I would say for a lot of knives that are ground, you know, basically this height and this length, and the length doesn't have much to do with it, but this type of flat, most of the time blades like this are a little bit thinner. I don't know, I feel like I'm getting hung up on this and I shouldn't be. This knife will do just fine during normal EDC cutting tasks. There's not going to be an enormous amount of resistance on that blade despite it not being razor thin behind the edge, right? There's just a lot of flat here and not a lot of room to drop, but that's fine. It's going to be a plenty strong blade despite it not being a super thick stock to begin with. The blade looks nice. This sort of heavy acid wash or tumbling in combination with the satin on the flat wouldn't be my first choice, but I know a lot of people really like that, so that's fine. There's a lot of choices. It says Arcform on one side, and then it has what I believe is what does it say there? TK? Well, it has the designer's insignia, I guess. I'm so sorry if I'm not familiar with the designer there, but yeah, I like the blade. I mean, this is going to be a nice utilitarian blade shape, and truthfully, it's going to do just fine, like I said, at any EDC task you could throw at it. And then everything was ground symmetrically, right? Feels nice. The edge was done nice. Everything looks great. There's no sharp edges up here. Maybe a little bitty up here, but it's really not that bad. It's been knocked down a little bit by that heavy stonewash or whatever's going on right here. So it looks really nice, right? Some people are going to really like that. As is typical with most Protec knives, it comes to a seam. There is no backspacer or standoff, and that's fine. There's plenty of structural integrity in that, and I don't have a problem with that. As long as they meet up and there's no odd gaps or symmetry issues, right, then it's fine. 2 screws for the body screws over here, so that's nice. Minimal hardware. We have a pocket clip with recessed screws that is deep carry, and it's got a very teeny tiny little bit of a build. I've never really had a problem with Protec pocket clips. I think there's some of the better ones out there. There's really nothing to complain about here. I mean, the knife slips in and out of the pocket really, really easily. You can do it with one hand, right? There's a little bit of a bill, but they've got it sunk down enough that it's probably not going to catch too readily. It's also sunk down low enough, as is the case with a lot of Protec knives, that sometimes, depending on how thick the seam of your pocket is, sometimes you're going to have to use 2 fingers or sort of lift the clip up, right? But in this case, it should be just fine for regular jeans. I always like how Protec does the non-show side with the pivot. It's just flush. And in this case, we've got sort of this concrete look contrasting with the blue frame underneath, so that's fine. The blade is perfectly centered. On this guy, we have no up and down blade play whatsoever. There is a hint of side to side, but this is not a brand new knife. This is a used knife, and I'm going to guess, as is the case with most Protecs, and I have owned many and handled many, you can simply crank on that pivot just a teeny tiny little bit, and it'll probably go right back to normal. I found that every time that I feel like one of my Protecs has a little bit of blade play, I take a single drop, like a single drop of break-free CLP, drop it into the pivot, and then I get the pivot exactly where I want it in terms of just a little tiny crank on that thing, and it goes right back to center, and the lockup is absolutely solid. I've had to do that once with my own personal, and I use this knife, my own personal Protec Strider SNG, and it has been fine ever since, absolutely. So, not going to count it off for that, but just, you know, if you experience blade play and you can't seem to crank it down tight enough to where, you know, it doesn't have blade play, but it's, you know, smooth, right? Then I'd say maybe you've got an issue, maybe you want to contact Protec, but I really haven't experienced that very much. So all the way around, what can we complain about here? Well, not a whole lot, truthfully. The big things to me are, I've only got a 3-finger position, right? It's not as big as the original Arcform. And you're also awkward distance from the cutting edge. It's not super thin behind the edge, but it'll be just fine, right? For some people, it's going to be illegal or too big or both, right? I mean, this isn't a really big knife, but in some places it's illegal because of its blade length. And in a lot of places, it's still illegal because it's an automatic knife, right? This knife is made well despite those things. It fires as hard as any other Protec I've ever handled. And I think it's an interesting design. It's certainly a great little EDC knife. Carry profile is great. It's got good blade steel. So not really a lot to complain about. You know, if you don't like knives that you can't get a full purchase on, or that you feel like you're really far away from the blade, right, you're not going to like this. If you don't like knives that don't actually have a tip, right, if you do a lot of puncture stuff with your blades, this isn't going to be the best for you. Those are really the only little nitpicks that I can throw at it. I think the best thing about this knife is that in its base form, which is just the tumbled and the standard black aluminum, or I think it's probably just the tumbled blade in any color aluminum without any special features, they come in at $165. Yeah, for a full US knife, I've always been, you know, very, very happy with Protec's prices. I think that's just fine. This is a very high quality, very EDC friendly side opening automatic for $165. So that's fine. They do go up a little bit depending on the finishes and other features and things like that when they are available. But $165 is great. Now, that doesn't do people a whole lot of good if they're not available right now. You know, I kind of just review the knives that I think are interesting to me in the hopes that they will once again become available. In some cases, I am fully aware that they will never become available again, like in the case of, you know, certain short run knives or just limited run knives in general. But in this case, you know, given Protec's history, that they may or may not become available again. They're really, really cool though. If you have a chance to pick one up for around that price in the secondary market and you trust the person that you're picking it up from, right, and you're okay with the price that they're asking, then yeah, I think you're going to be very happy with this. This knife is absolutely going to go on my most recommended knives playlist. I think this is great. Thanks so much again to @AddictedToEDC for sending this guy my way. I think that's going to be pretty much it today, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.